I think we have the power, wealth, and influence today that we could completely transform things into the future for our daughters and the other women coming behind us.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frumming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rise and Stride. With me today is Julie Castro-Abrams, Managing Partner at How Women Invest, a venture firm seeking to realize the economic potential of female founders and female investors, and CEO of How Women Lead, a network of over 100,000 executive women focused on change leadership representation, including corporate boards and venture capital. Julie has spent the majority of her career working to build women-owned companies and providing economic access for women. Her leadership impact includes changing laws on women on corporate boards, ensuring women put board service on their path, and placing women on boards. Her commitment to justice and community also plays out in her personal endeavor, which includes serving as a leader on the boards of organizations focused on women and children, Latinos, economic development, and the arts. Julie, thank you so much for joining us because you are extremely busy.
Hey, Denise, I'm so happy to be here. Well, a lot of my friends and people I work with are CPAs. So I want to see all of the women CPAs in particular really see a pathway to their career advancement.
Absolutely. And I see it too, as I always say, what does every business have in common? A CPA. So CPAs can also help other business owners, women, help them invest and get on board. So there is definitely a win here.
Yeah, critical linchpins.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I am thrilled that you're here with us today. I know we've talked before, but I'm just interested in hearing more from you because you have a story and you're just so passionate about what you do. So maybe we can start with a question on kind of what fuels that passion. What's your story of, why you created How Women Lead, How Women Invest, and how you keep that passion going?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I'm 56 as we are recording this. And there's a generation of us that are really unique. So I was a girl athlete. I got to take advantage of the Title IX ruling that said you got to invest in girls' sports equally. There was all this stuff that was happening in the 70s and the 80s for women's rights. And I don't know if CPAs probably know this, but we had to pass a law in the United States saying that women could actually take out commercial loans without a man's signature. And that literally happened during that period of time. And I remember my mom being so mad she couldn't even get her own money out of the bank without my father's signature. And it was her inheritance, And so I just remember this. I felt when we were growing up, like, everything's going to change. Women are going to have all the rights. We're going to have to worry about any of it. And yet, I also entered the workforce when we were supposed to wear pencil ties and jackets with shoulder pads to look like men. And so there was all these conversations about could women actually work and look feminine at the same time? Like such a weird moment in the history of the world, frankly. And what's happened is today, I really feel like our generation were truly the ones pushing the envelope. We got the benefit of the activism of, I would say, the women who were, 20 years my senior, 10 and 20 years. But we were this sort of empowered generation because other people had broken down a bunch of barriers for us. Women have more education than men today. We're getting more advanced degrees. Today, women have 50% of the wealth, which is insane to think about. We control 85%, I believe, of all household spending decisions. And a lot of us, we have the first generation of a very large number of us, hence my huge network here, of women who have 20 to 35 years of operational work experience. We've never had this before. And so, I grew up with all this sense of hope and possibility. Honestly, how sometimes you well, a lot of cognitive bias works this way, but like I still believe that, but I keep getting surprised about all the crappy stuff out there. I'm like, is this still happening in 2023? And I have a daughter, and I'm just sometimes I really get heartbroken when I see that we didn't fix enough stuff for her. And so I think we have the power, wealth, and influence today that we could completely transform things into the future for our daughters and the other women coming behind us. And there's some critical levers. I mean, certainly getting women into the very, very top rungs of leadership. We're still underrepresented grossly in the C-suite and in the CEO roles in the largest companies in the United States. You can still count on, one hand in many cases. And then so by getting more women on boards, it's something we could mandate, because it actually is, it's governance protection for financial performance of companies, right? Product recalls happen 28 days faster when you have diversity on a board, for example. So if we, we help move the needle from 10 to 33%. So I would say we're like nearly there. Three women on a board of 10, you actually get your voice heard. That's protective for a company. Up games, everybody. And my hope is that that's going to help with some of the C-suite representation. The data says it might. I don't know if it's very firm yet, but and then the other big issue is, assets management, right? Only 1.4% of all assets are managed by women and people of color combined. So that's not okay. And it's our money at this point. Now we realize it's 50% of our wealth, and we're not represented in who's managing assets. And then the other hugely egregious number is only 2% of all venture funding goes to companies founded by women. So how are you going to get women CEOs if you don't fuel their companies and build, help them grow and get to those levels? So anyway, so those are the things I'm trying to like break down those final barriers, because at this point it's not good for anybody if we don't figure this out.
Absolutely. And the CPAs listening here, CFOs, you can also help with having, just more understanding of the financial piece, and definitely having a voice there, because that's a big, as you just said, that's a big piece.
Well, I always say, like, you have daily moments of little power that just make sure you take advantage of them. Like every single vendor, just ask, how many women are on your board? Oh, how many women are in your C-suite? You're not threatening that you're going to take away their business. You're asking a question, and you guys know how this works. If enough of us ask the question, all of a sudden, it's going to come up in a senior meeting or at the board meeting or in something where it's like, people are asking me how many women are on our board. How, what are we going to do about it? So you just asking strategic questions and frankly, asking it in your own company. I know quite a few women CFOs who are like, I took this job at this company and I said, like, you don't have any women on your board, and I'm going to help you fix that as part of my role as CFO, like actually being really assertive about it. And then I would also say, like, do you have anything to do with your investment management decisions or any kind of, let's say, a pension fund or anything else that you're involved in? Who is managing that money? Where are you investing that money? There's like this year, there's a new ETF that actually is with the women CEOs of mid-cap companies in the United States. That's worth looking at. Their performance is actually great. And if the data holds true, it's likely to outperform. So there are things we can do throughout our day that are not all that aggressive. It's just like, lightweight little things you can do. And it doesn't have to take a lot of work.
No, I think that's a great tip, because sometimes we think there's so many big things we have to do and it becomes overwhelming. But just saying, make people aware. I think that's the key, right? Ask the strategic questions. It's a really good action step for everyone. Everyone can do that. So thank you.
We got a lot of mystery, especially around things that feel like they happen behind closed doors and where we were never invited before. Just educate yourself. Like at How Women Lead, we just had a conference called Get on Board Week. We do it every year. We have 41 events. Understand how boardrooms work. Get in there and present if you can. And you yourself, everybody needs finance experts. Put it on your roadmap for yourself. And if you don't think you're enough, right now, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, because everybody needs financial expertise. You may be right for a very small startup board, but some board needs you. And so I really want you to be thinking about where that fits in your career map. It is a power play. It changes what happens, how people think about you inside your company. People will say, "Oh, what do you mean you're on the board of a venture-backed startup?" All of a sudden you're invited to new meetings and you're seen as a power player. It changes the trajectory of your career. So just get involved in understanding venture capital. You can invest in a venture firm like my firm. It's designed for first-time women investors. It's a $25,000 minimum investment over 4 years. So it's $6,250 each investment amount. That's super darn accessible for most of us. And when you tell people you invested in venture, it literally changes what they think about you. It's just they'll take a second look, and it's additive, and it helps in your day job career, but it also helps with the other things you might want to accomplish in the future.
Mm-hmm. Definitely helps elevating your career, right, and who you are. Absolutely.
Well, and the networks, and there's all kinds of benefits. But you can just invest and tell people, and you don't have to. That's not much work. In about an hour and 10 minutes, you can invest in my fund. So,
well, I like that you broke it down like that. $6,250. That's not a lot, right? Can buy in over couple of years.
And I can never, promise performance, but in my first fund, within 18 months, we returned 25% of the invested capital. So, people have had a lot of, it's not a donation. It's a real investment opportunity, and you can do it aligned with your values. So you can pick something focused on climate. You can pick an organization like mine, which is focused on female investors. And listen, this is not just, yes, it's your values. It's also financially responsible. If you look at the performance numbers, you look at where are you going to make the most money? Well, it's going to be under markets that are where there's a blue ocean. There's not enough capital. You're going to get the best of the best in the fund, right? And there's also a lot of evidence, the CEO of BlackRock came out and said that climate was literally going to be where all the unicorns were going to be coming from into the future. He said it in this last year. So, are you playing in the climate space? If not only is it good for the world, and your kids will be, it's a good example for your kids. But that's where all the, a lot of the upside potential is going to come from. There's huge investment happening in climate related.
Oh, yes, I agree. And just passing the bills 261 and 253, that's just the beginning, right? So yes, absolutely. Keep your eye on the ESG space. You need to. I would ask you, because one other question I had on the Get on Boards week, that was last week, right? And Julie had 41 events and she was everywhere. So thank you for being with us today. That's probably exhausted. Do you have that only once a year? Can someone get engaged if they miss that?
Yeah. I would consider that sort of the, big movement building, moment, but we have stuff all the time. So 4 times a year, we offer what we call board readiness. This is where you can go through a 5-week course to learn all about getting, what is the right kind of board for you. You'll meet 10 to 20 directors in those sessions. He'll tell you, who might look like you, and you might feel like a real sense of demystification, hopefully. And then you literally create a roadmap for how you're going to network and market yourself, and also an opportunity for you to get involved with, build out your own materials and get involved with people who are experts in your value, helping you with your value proposition and stuff. So you not only learn a lot, but you walk out with the assets that you need to get into action. So that course happens at least 4 times a year for us. And we have tons of Cal CPA folks that have gone through that program. And at this point, it's really good. We've had at least over 1,000 women who participated, and we actually help people get board seats as well here. So if you have a need for a corporate director, please contact us. We don't charge money unless you want us to own the full search. But if you just want us to source people for you, contact us. And then we also keep a database. So if you're ready to look at going on a board and you have a board bio and know what kind of board you want to go on, absolutely go on our website. There's a link. No, and it's nobody pays anything for that to be included in our search database. And we probably placed about 32 people on boards last year. So it's a decent number.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll include too, when we send out the podcast, some information too on the website, so everybody can get on there. Just a question. So you're creating really a community, right? And I think that's so important to belonging, diversity, inclusion. As part of that, tell us a little bit about the mentorship and how that's facilitated. I think we all know why it's so important, but sometimes it's hard to be a matchmaker. So tell us how you succeed there.
Well, I wouldn't say that our organization as a network is designed to be matchmaking, but matches happen all the time. And we do have specific, unique parts of our organization where that's formal. So basically, what we know is that our organization is designed for top executive leaders, women at the what we call middlescence. So even an age range, you have different needs right around the time you're in your mid 40s until you're, let's call it 70. It's very interesting. It's a different developmental life stage, and most of us don't even know what to expect. And we often feel like we're the only one. So in your 20s and 30s and early 40s, most people are running up the career ladder. You might be raising a family. You're so heads down. And I'll tell you, for myself during those years, I was just trying to survive. And I had friends and people whose weddings I was in my early 20s. And it was like, sorry, I don't have time for you until these people go off to college. I was running stuff, and, every time I sat down, I'd fall asleep. And my kids are like, you never watch a whole movie, Mom. And my daughter also, here's another element. Like, my daughter also said to me once, she was 11, I think. She was like, Mommy, you're not like the other mothers. And I'm like, I know. So if you're also sort of a ceiling breaker and you're an outlier, it's also kind of interesting. And you need to recreate your colleagues and friends that are like you in your mid 40s in a way that you don't really understand how critical it is. And I just want you to understand you're not alone. This is a developmental need. Women are happier in that middle-essence life stage and starting in your mid 40s if they're doing things with other women and if they're having an impact. And I would assert other women who are at your same level. If you're spending all of your time mentoring everybody else, you're the only in the room, the only woman, the only senior woman, that actually is, could be fine for a period of time, but there's a point in time when that's not enough. And it's very isolating, especially if you run your own company, for example, or you're the CEO, which I've been since I was 31 or something. And everybody wants something from you. And because of that, it's pretty darn isolating. I'm seeing, Denise, you're smiling a little bit because you get it, right? Like, right. And so when you're with other women at your level and you get together with them, your nervous system literally relaxes. And then the other thing that happens is we start to consolidate power And that's where change happens. So we can pass laws on women on boards. We can, all of us get together and say, okay, well, I got this board opportunity. I can't do it because I have a conflict. Who in this group thinks this might be right for them or can help me find the right person, right? That's the work that we need to be doing in this life stage. And it's not enough just to network or hang out with. I mean, my first experience with this, frankly, was somebody she was very wealthy. She had a property outside of Paris, and 25 of us stayed there. And I just remember getting there and being like, oh my God, I don't have to shrink for these people. I can relax and be myself, because it was like the first time I'd ever been with women at my level in an environment like that, right? But you only want to do that so long until you have to have an impact too. So I just remember that when you're thinking about architecting your portfolio life or whatever you're doing in those years, you need other women at your level and you need to have an impact. So a lot of us feel also like, wow, and people will tell me, they're like, I sold my soul, or like, listen, I made a lot of money, but that is, once you got it, you're like, it is no longer enough. So that our network is women coming together and saying, let's learn, let's change things, let's do it collectively and get together. And we have a credo where we ask everyone to be fierce advocates for each other, to say yes to making introductions, to reinforce her voice, and to be unabashedly visible. If you heard what I just said, those are all things that are counter the culture. And you may have felt a sense of like, oh my God, wouldn't that be nice? But that is actually the commitment of everybody in our community. And because of that, one, everybody feels safe, especially women of color, feel safer when they're in this community. And it also is the invitation to open up your networks and the opportunities for other people in a way that's generous, and you get to receive and give with people that are your peers. And it's wonderful to be in that environment. So organizationally, I would say you don't join the organization and we say, here is your mentor. That's not really how it works here. It's much more, here are the other women in med tech, finance. Here are the other women. Like, that's how we organize people in what I call affinities.
I like that. I do. And I read that on your website, and it just struck me because I remember hearing a quote by Madeleine Albright that said, I think it was, there's a special place in hell or something for women that don't help
other women. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, 100%.
It's true, because sometimes it isn't friendly out there.
But the culture taught us that, Denise, and I just want to say I've participated in it. I've been catty earlier in my life because those were the rules of the game. I remember getting my hand slapped about making introductions and being hyper protective about it. Like, culturally, we were taught all this stuff. So what we have to do is actually unlearn those behaviors, or we're not going to get ahead in the way we want. And the whole culture does it to us. So no more shame. Just like, let's just try to be better and create an environment that's better. And I'll say, we center women of color actively in our organization, which means women of color are the majority of all of our boards, of our leadership groups. We never do a program that's only white women, intentionally, because as a white woman myself, I always get my needs met. I mean, in a women-only environment, for sure. Women of color are historically in what I would call feminist organizations and movements. We're often set, sort of the white women set the agenda, and they were like, hey, women of color, let me put you on the front page of the newsletter. And that's not okay. And that's why you've seen, like, most organizations, it's not fully blended. In my organization, 50% of all the people engaged are women of color. And if you look at our venture firm, that is just an outgrowth from our network, and this was not active or by design, but it was by design, I guess, because that's how we run the organization. Our venture firm, 50% of the investors are women of color. And that means they're sending the women that they know who need venture funding. So 50% of our investments are in companies founded by women of color. And that's what our country looks like. That's what it should be. Our country is, no longer really going to be in the next couple of years a majority white, right? So we've got to figure out how we can create a table where everybody has a seat at the table, and that's one of my big commitments.
Right. And you said before blue ocean, right? It is a blue ocean out there, and you got to think of it that way for everything, honestly.
And I would just say in these issues around race and ethnicity, right? Be really careful. You don't allow somebody else to create like this oppression Olympics thing. I saw an article recently where it's like, of the money that goes to in venture, the majority of it goes to white women. It's like, why would we pit white women and women of color against each other in that way? It's 2% for all of us combined. That's ridiculous. And to pretend like somehow, white women get more and that's a problem. I'm sorry, but like white men get 80% of all funding. There's some male-female teams that get about 18%. But that's the problem. And white women don't always behave well, let's be clear. But even so, we got to not be pitted against each other and all just try and work and be better. So I'm sorry I hope it's okay that I am just speaking so openly about issues of race and ethnicity. It's really important to me that we just start to talk about it. And, I think this constantly sort of hiding the issue and not really talking about it is not good for us. We're not solving anything when we won't talk about stuff. So.
No, it has to be open and transparent. And part of the podcast, the reason for it is to find paths forward, and we're stronger together. So you're right aligned with what we're doing. So I have another question for you, just because of your expertise and kind of the world that you're in. It's, if you could make one change to help women at work, what would that be? I'd be curious to what your thoughts are.
Well, I think we've already gotten pretty darn close in terms of who's on boards. So I'm going to say venture, because culture is set in the first 30 people in a company. If only white guys are starting companies that are funded and get big, they're going to be the ones setting the culture. And especially if it's only male run company and only men founded, that's going to be a lopsided culture. It's not going to be good for women. So until we get equal representation, equal fuel for who's building the companies and leading them, women founders hire 6 times more women and they hire them at equal pay. So, and even in venture, you think about it, it's like, think about like one of the biggest examples we've got is Uber, right? Huge, one of the biggest companies in the world. And then they fired Travis Kalanick because the CEO, who was behaving in ways that weren't great. But let's think about this. He was a relatively young man when he started that company. Whoever was around the table as a venture capitalist could have helped him mature and evolve the culture. The cost to investors, employees, and everybody by having that massive crisis and firing him, that's huge. That was a massive shockwave through our systems. And my daughter works there. When they fired him, she was 23 when she started there. A year later, they fired Travis. They brought in the attorney general to do an equity audit. Do you know they adjusted her salary by 40% because the boys were getting paid 40% more than her? Like, just imagine the financial impact in a lifetime when that's how inequitable it is from day one. People will blame women. Women don't negotiate. She was 23. Really? She's supposed to negotiate 40% more than what her offer was? That is a culture problem. behavior problem, bias problem that we need to fix from day one. And I don't know how to just change the bias in those private systems where the same kind of people are starting the companies as are the VCs. Like, it's too many of the same perspective. And my daughter will never be safe in those kinds of companies until she runs her own company and gets a lot of funding, get rid of the Series B cliff. So, yeah, I think that's it. A long answer to your simple question.
Well, it's the same lens, like you said, the same. I think that's just part of it, kind of gets reverberated in the system, so to speak. Yeah. So, last question for you, because we're getting low on time, but we could talk for a long time.
I know, Denise.
You'll have to come back because I have so many questions. Is that we often talk, or what would you define first as a leader? Because it's always interesting to hear, what is leadership? And then another question is, what advice would you give to those women that want to be in the C-suite? I think part of it is to, go on How Women Lead and make sure that they kind of look into being on a board and so forth. But what other advice would you give?
One of the things we offer is something called visible impact. It's about how you can, get visible. And, we were taught that it's indelicate, that you shouldn't take up a lot of space. Culturally, especially, Latinas and Asian women got it doubly, that message was double down for them. But I would say, like, get visible externally. I know it feels like I just talked about and said for myself, like, you're running up the ladder in your company, doing everything you can. And then maybe you have kids at home. It's very hard to think about adding anything else. But if you can go on a nonprofit board and you can start to sort of be visible in the community, it helps your career a lot. Or advising a startup. You can put boundaries on it. It doesn't have to take over your life, but it's really important to do that pretty young. And I'm talking about in your 20s, certainly in your 30s. And if you don't know how to get going on that, our organization is going to do a training in a couple of weeks, and we do this stuff with a regular basis, which is about how do you get on a nonprofit board and what does nonprofit board governance look like, and we do some matchmaking. But you gotta be seen outside of your day job. It helps you get promoted in your day job. When they see that you're externally visible, it also is protective for you. It's going to be harder if you are visible with the company's name next to your name. It's going to be harder for them to let you go if it'll be just part of the thing that they look at. If they have to lay people off, they'll be like, well, Denise is out there representing us on the XYZ, board, and that's really visible and it's good for the company. It's just another critical thing that you can do for your career. So yeah, get out there, be visible, write articles, assert some leadership in the civic space.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. And I would say get uncomfortable. Make sure you're uncomfortable, right, Julie? That's
the culture taught you things that are actually not good for you. And we bought into it. So you got to get over it. Yeah. We all have stories. Somebody told you when you were 8, you were too loud, or they said, you're so smart, stop raising your hand so much in class. I'm telling you, I know this because I'm with all these really top senior women. Every single one of them has a version of that story where, it was like, whatever it is, you're too quiet, you're too loud, you're too something that does not serve you anymore. Don't let those old voices take up space in your brain. It's somebody just wrote a book called The Mirrored Door, Ellen Taff. She's amazing. Tafe, actually, I think I said that wrong. And it's all about, like, what are we carrying around that isn't really a true mirror for us? It's something that somebody else said and we believed it, and it's not. We should not continue to give it space.
Right. Tell your own story, right? For sure. Your own narrative. It has been such a pleasure to talk to you. I took notes there and a couple things that you said. So thank you for sharing your insights. And I would say to our audience, if you have any questions, please go on How Women Lead, How Women Invest, and you also have How Women Give.
Me too. We give grants to women and girls organizations. Yeah, because we're whole people. All this is important parts of our lives.
Exactly. So it's been a pleasure, Julie. Thank you for
Thanks,
your time.
Denise, for your leadership. You're amazing.
Well, you're amazing, especially after this last week. Thank you. I appreciate
My
you
pleasure.
showing up.
My pleasure.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.